Give me 1 second here. I need to find where I have all my notes from when I just posted this. There we go. Yeah. All right. How's it? How's it going, bud? Glad to be with you here today. This is the Hands Like Hyde podcast, and I'm your host, Charlie Pfeiffer. When I was a kid, my dad was like super big into reptiles, and we spent some time overseas in Africa as missionaries. And he used to collect and gather all of these different animals. And one of the animals that he had, um, we had two of them for quite some time, and it was the chameleon. And the crazy thing about chameleons, not only can they launch their tongue out of their mouth and snatch prey out of the air like that, they can also change colors and just adapt to whatever environment they're on. Yeah, it's a green forest. They can turn green if you could probably look on YouTube and find chameleons changing colors. Orange, red, green, brown, multiple different colors. They're so cool. They just blend right in. And another thing that's really awesome about chameleons is that their eyes, kind of work interdependently of each other. And so you can have one looking straight and one can learn to this, and they can look up and down and forward and back and just all these things. They're fascinating creatures. But the reason I kind of tell that story is because in our lives, you know, especially like in my story growing up with the traumas and just a lot of the dysfunction in my family of origin that we dealt with, uh, I learned to be a chameleon. That's how you learn to kind of blend in. And I know that, in our work, especially if you work on a job site or you have a crew of guys that are the foreman of, or you just work on a crew, you know, when I was in the masonry field, working with a bunch of guys on scaffolding, laying brick up a wall, you learn real quick how to kind of blend in with the culture of the crew. Um, yeah, man, because it could, it could get it could get freaking abusive sometimes, right? Holy cow. But I wanted to kind of throw this out to get us started with this whole concept. Galatians 1:10, am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. That's Paul writing, right? So he himself is dealing with this idea of being a chameleon, finding himself wanting to please men versus like focus on really pleasing God. But anyway, so what happened was last week, I went to a customer's house, a client, to pick up a telehandler. He's a mason, and he was going to go. He's moving from one job to the next. So I jumped in the Pete and hook up the lowboy, and we head to this guy's driveway to pick up his telehandler. Now I knew him. I hadn't seen him in a long time. He was actually the foreman of the masonry company I used to work for years and years and years ago. Man, this is probably like 12 or 13 years ago. I used to work for this masonry company. And he and I got along pretty good. We never had like a sour relationship or anything like that. But the last time that I really saw him was before getting into recovery, before getting freedom from pornography addiction and working through healing with my wife, and, the substance issues that I was dealing with as well. And, um, and so I kind of knew where he lived, and I knew his driveway was a kind of narrow, small, asphalt driveway. And here I am, in a 65-foot long tractor trailer trying to figure out how we're going to back into this guy's driveway to pick up his telehandler. So, and I just said to him, I was like, well, why don't we just, what if I just park on the street, and you can just bring the machine out? Well, his response was, well, the other guy that usually picks us up, you know, he backs in the driveway. And so, like, right there, the whole like chameleon, or in other words, like people pleasing, side of me was kind of triggered because I'm thinking to myself, well, I want Joe to approve of me just like I did when I was on his crew for many, many years as a bricklayer. And so, like, well, if this other guy who this other guy can back in his driveway, well, maybe I could back in his driveway too, right? So I get there and I kind of get myself set up, and anyway, I get back in his driveway. It was not the most, beautiful job that I've ever done backing into somebody's driveway before. But I didn't hit nothing, and it did not sound expensive backing up, right? So that's always kind of a good thing. But I pull into this driveway, and the first thing he says to me is, "Man, Rusty." And here's where the people pleasing chameleon side come out. My response to him was, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, hell yeah, it's Rusty." Well, because I don't drive as much as I used to. I'm more of a diesel mechanic, manage the fleet now, and so I drive, once a week or something, if that. But wanting to not confront him or stand up and be, confident in my own abilities, I just sort of like, oh yeah, 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 I'm rusty, man. And then it just turned into him, continuing to compare, other people's abilities to what he thought they should be, and it was, it was kind of a mess. So why is this kind of important? Well, a couple years ago, in growth and in healing, awareness is key. It starts with awareness. In our fields and in our careers, we want to do a good job. We want to excel. We want to be the best at what we do, and we're proud of what we do. And so, you know, whether you're laying brick or whether you're turning wrenches or whether you're pulling wire, your your craft is a place that you take great pride in. So to that end, we tend to pay a lot of attention to what we're doing. And we want to do better. We want to be more efficient. We want to be more professional. We want that plumbing job or that wiring job to be amazing when it's done. We want it to look good because not only do our customers get good satisfaction from it, but we also do as well from a job well done. So a couple years ago, I was on this job, and the foreman was there, and I was running the dump truck, and they were digging some footers for some piers. The foreman was there, and I found myself, wanting to get his approval. So, uh, like it, if I do like an exceptionally good job, maybe he'll give me an attaboy, and then I will feel like I'm valuable. I will feel like I'm doing a good job because somebody else said I was doing a good job, right? Well, he didn't take the bait. I said, well, dang it. Well, then it was about lunchtime. I said, hey, can I run to the store and get you a drink? And his response to me was, no, I'm a man. If I want something, I'll go get it. Ouch. Right? I'm like, dang, man. So, okay. Well, then clearly I'm not a man because I kind of feel, this is what all was going through my head through this moment. This is all was going through my head. And then I caught myself again, right? Self-awareness is key. And then I caught myself beginning to talk like him, act like him, think like him, behave like him. And I realized that, well, maybe if I become a chameleon, maybe if I change who I am to mirror or look more like who you are, then maybe I'll get that attaboy that I'm looking for. Maybe I'll get that validation or affirmation that, hey, I'm somebody. I'm a good dude. Yeah. People pleasing, chameleon. One thing I can tell you is that you come by it honestly. I know I came by it honestly. It's a survival pattern that we learned growing up in like really dysfunctional, abusive environments, especially with dads, or parent system or caregivers where, we didn't get that positive affirmation, that messaging that was like, I'm proud of you. You're accepted. You did a good job. you know, I remember listening to a podcast with Adam Sandler, and he was on there going, "Yeah, terrific, yeah, terrific, yeah, yeah, terrific," and he kind of showed like in the beginning of his movies, there's that scene like the Happy Madison films, and it's like terrific. Well, that's like his dad used to always tell him that when he was growing up as a kid. He shared this story. It's like his dad's response to everything he did was, "Yeah, terrific," and I was like, "Wow." That's not what I got at all. At all. Um, you disappointed me. So we take on this maladaptive coping mechanism. We try to like people please and we try to become a chameleon in this person to avoid feeling like we don't have enough, avoid feeling worthless, avoid feeling like we're a disappointment. It all starts with awareness, right? So Dr. Henry Cloud, he's a pretty amazing psychologist. He's written a whole bunch of books. He's well known for like the Boundaries series and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he outlines this path of self-awareness to to get away from these damaging behaviors because they are damaging, right? So it first starts with awareness, then it goes to focused attention, right? Deliberate practice, and finally having that relational support. That's kind of like a four-step process to get through this. So the first thing is awareness, focused attention, do some journaling to figure out why do I why did I go that route? What am I feeling or thinking? What's the story I'm telling myself in my head that puts me in these mind states of needing to become a chameleon to people please others so that I feel better? And then, relational support, taking these to, a trusted friend or group or mentor, and just hashing it out. Somebody who can be that, that person who's when you show up and you're like, man, this is the situation. What happened today? This is how I felt. I found out that I sort of betrayed my own self because I was looking for the approval of somebody else. And the response you get is terrific. I love you, man. It's good. I care about you. You're like, it's all right. Like find people like that to kind of go through this stuff. So that focused attention piece, though, you're aware of it, focused attention on it, deliberate practice. That's where this comes into like pausing in that moment, taking a slow, deep breath, and then just kind of reminding yourself that you're already accepted, right? Reminding yourself that you're already welcome, that you are not a disappointment, that you have what it takes. And in this situation, when I, met up with my former coworker, after I loaded up his machine and all that kind of stuff, like I realized that my anxiety started kind of calming down and settling down, and things started getting better, right? So ask yourself this question: the next time you find yourself becoming a chameleon, the next time you find yourself shape shifting to the way somebody else behaves or talks or walks or dresses, so that, right, for the purpose of feeling accepted, earning and winning over that validation or affirmation, ask yourself, why is being accepted by this person worth betraying myself? Why is it worth betraying myself? And I guarantee you that, like, if you call up that buddy of yours who knows you really well, you know the one, the dude you crack the beers with, the guys you go to your house, you hang out with, the one you go on the hike with, the dude you ride in the truck with every day to work. You know, you call up that dude and you ask him that question, why is it worth betraying to myself? I'm pretty sure the answer you're gonna get is it ain't worth it, bro. Don't do it. Right? This is what it takes to become solid and confident in who we are. Awareness. If you struggle with this kind of stuff, people pleasing, chameleon behavior, I want to be the first guy to tell you that I get it. You're not alone. I know what that feels like. I know the shame that it brings up at the end of the day when you realize you're hanging out with some guy or a group of guys at work and you weren't yourself. I know what that feels like. I know that hurts. And I want to be the first one to tell you that you don't have to be that way. You don't have to be that way to be accepted because you are already accepted exactly the way you are. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have a great week.